Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Renee. Today I'm going to be talking about borderline personality disorder, also known as BPD. We're going to be talking about what BPD is, explaining BPD to someone who doesn't have BPD, coming from someone with BPD, also the treatment options for it, and personal experience so far, briefly. Borderline personality disorder can also be known as emotional regulation disorder, and it's basically a mental disorder characterized by unstable mood, behaviors, and relationships. A lot of the things that someone with BPD will feel very intensely is a very, very intense fear of abandonment. So not wanting to be abandoned by anybody. You feel like everybody is going to leave you. You feel like everyone is against you and everyone's going to leave you. No matter what you do, everyone's going to leave you. You have an absolute fear of being on your own, which leads me on to my next one. You have difficulty being alone, which also comes from the fear of being abandoned. Extreme anger, that is one thing that I struggle with mine, is really bad anger outbreaks. Impulsive behaviors such as driving, spending, putting yourself in dangerous situations, whether it be drinking, drugs, anything like that. Mood swings, and continuously pushing other people away but just wanting to be loved. BPD you begin in early adulthood, and it does usually stem from childhood trauma. BPD affects your feelings towards your self-image, the way you feel about yourself and the way you feel about other people, and it also affects the way that you behave and the way that you actually come across to people. One of the things that I struggle really badly with is being so self-aware. So one of the things that's really intense, uncontrollable emotions and feelings. So you can know that the way you're reacting is completely and utterly ridiculous. Like, say for example, and this is an example that's happened to me, you know, everything, you've had a horrible day, everything, you've had a horrible couple of weeks, everything is piling on top of one another. Open the fridge, something falls out, that's it. On the ground, crying, meltdown, it's the end of the world. And you know that logically, if you were somebody else walking past, you'd be like, what the fuck? Like, so what? A jar of garlic fell out the fridge. It didn't break, it didn't make any mess, nothing happened. Why are you on the ground crying about it? You know that it looks ridiculous, but you cannot control that emotion. You can sit there and you can cry about it and you can't control it, even though you know to other people that it looks ridiculous. Same thing with anger. Open the fridge, garlic falls out. That's it. Brim. Smash. Everything. Uncontrollable anger. Screaming at everyone around you. Abusing everyone because the garlic's fallen out the fridge. Hasn't broken. Hasn't spilt. Just need to pick it up and put it back in the fridge. But it's the one thing that tips you over the edge. And it's a lash out of rage or cry. And you can see that it's not a big deal. It's not something that you need to react that way towards. But you can't help it, because you can't help it. Even though you know how ridiculous it looks, you cannot control that emotion inside of you and how strong it is and how forceful it is and how much it needs to be released. Another thing that is difficult to deal with is relationships and being comfortable with who you are with other people, whether it be friendships, partners, feeling as though if you be your true self, people aren't going to be accepting of who you are. But that's not the case. Your vibe attracts your tribe, and that is something I will completely stick by. Who you are will attract the people around you. The energy that you're putting out is what you're going to receive as well. If you're putting out negative energy and you're not being fulfilling towards relationships, how are they meant to be fulfilling towards you? But in saying that, as much as this is a hard thing, we also, with the people we love, a favourite person, that person, and we all have that one person, and it can change really quickly as well. Your whole world can be completely and utterly crumbling. You can feel like your whole world is crumbling, and you can know that you have so many people around you who love you and are there for you and want to support you. But unless you've got that one person that you want, you feel like you have nobody. Even though you know that you have so many people around you, it doesn't register like that. Also, with your favorite person, you will want to surround yourself with them every second of every minute of every day, and it can seem like you're clingy, annoying and smothering, and you feel like you are towards you feel like you're annoying them and that you are all of those things, but you just want to be surrounded by them because you also don't want to feel that abandonment that they're going to leave you, which means you then over obsess with them and cling too much, and then you become too much and you push them away, which is then how we end up with the push and pull method of I hate you, please don't leave me. People with BPD are incredibly impulsive. They can appear loud and outgoing and can very much seem like the life of the party. They also seem to be people who live very chaotic lives. If you are friends with someone with borderline personality disorder, you will know what I mean. Their life is very, very chaotic. And to other people, it's like, wow, what is going on? But to you, it doesn't feel it just feels normal. I can sit there and explain my day to somebody else and they're like, what the fuck, Renee? Like, that is not normal at all. And I'm like, oh, what do you mean? We also act impulsively to harm ourselves as a way of coping with the way that we feel. This, for the people around us, can be very, very difficult to understand. BPD affects 1 in 4 out of every 100 people that you will come across in your life. BPD is more common in women, and your symptoms usually appear as a teen and your early adulthood. Causes for BPD is usually a mixture of genetics, life lessons, and also very much so based off childhood trauma. BPD usually comes hand in hand with other mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety, and also PTSD. People with BPD can be oversensitive, and they could have suffered abuse or neglect during childhood. But not everybody who has been through these things will develop traits of borderline personality disorder or even be diagnosed with BPD. People with BPD are high to self-harm and suicide, but not all people with BPD are high to these things. Please make sure if you do think you have borderline personality disorder, you seek a doctor to go through the proper process to actually be diagnosed and not just self-diagnosed, because if it is something that you do suffer with, it is something that I highly recommend seeking assistance with to actually be able to deal with and live with and be able to have a normal life. They'll first start talking to you about basically your signs, your symptoms, the way that you feel, and they'll put you through a mental health assessment, which is then where you can be funded to see psychologists, where you can be funded to see psychologists at a discounted rate due to your mental health plan. In regards to treatment for BPD, there isn't any permanent treatment or actual fix for it. There is medication that you can take, there's therapies, you can seek a psychologist. There are also therapies like dialectic behavioural therapy. There's another one called mentalization therapy, and I think the third one is called transferred focus therapy. I don't know much about the last two, but DBT I know a smidgen about, but if you Google it, there is a lot more information on it, and you can also see where your local centres are, which you can look into that if it's something that you're already diagnosed with and you're wanting further assistance for. Now, moving on to when you have an episode. Having an episode for someone with BPD isn't just like someone having a down day. Every time you have an episode, whether you're having one a couple of times a day, whether you have one every couple of days, whether you haven't had one in a while and you have one once a week, your episodes, it feels like your entire world is ending. Every single part of your body feels like it's going to explode, and you can't possibly explain how you feel. You can't get the words out to even be able to express to someone what's wrong or how you can be helped, because in your head, even though in your head you know exactly what you need or you know what you want to say and how you're feeling, you can't get it out. You can't verbalize it. It's so hard to actually be able to get it out there and express what you want to say when it's just all in your head. My episodes can start with an incredibly short fuse. My temper is so bad. I can't control the outbursts. You can start smashing everything, screaming, whether you're trying to hurt yourself, whether it's, honestly, pinching, scratching, anything that you can do to inflict pain on yourself or anyone around you, or just smash anything to release the anger, because the anger inside is just, it's so hard to even begin to explain the rage that fills your body. It's like for me personally, it's like I start living in a imaginary world. I know the difference between wrong and right, but I feel like everything's a dream, so it doesn't matter what I do because it's not actually reality. I'm going to wake up and it's just going to be a dream. So even though I know that what I might be doing is wrong or that I'm going to have consequences for what I'm doing, I don't have the control to not be able to do it because I feel like it's a dream. And then when you obviously come out of that episode, that's when you get the rush of guilt, because you realize everything that you've done when you've been in this episode, that when you then come back to yourself, it's like this gut-wrenching feeling of all this absolute horrific guilt and sadness and everything for what you've done and what you've done to the people around you. You cry uncontrollably, you push the people away that you need the most around you, and then you try and pull them back, but you push them away, but they know that you need them, you know that you need them, but you don't know how to let them know that, to hold them there, because all you want to do is just abuse them. But we abuse them because we abuse those people because we know that they're always going to be there no matter what. They are the people that's closest to us. It doesn't matter what we do to them, we know that they're going to be there. And it's so horrible to say that and to be like that. But, whether it be your mum, your sibling, when you're lashing out and they're trying to help you and you end up lashing out at them, you feel instant regret and apologetic, and, you can apologize and you feel gut-wrenching pain for what you've done, but it doesn't make a difference. Like, you've done that, but they're still there, and we do that to them because they're our punching bag. We know they're going to be there, and we know no matter what we do, they're going to be there. But you also need to be careful, because it's not fair to use other people as a punching bag, because at one point they're not going to be there. Okay, so I'm going to now talk a little bit more about my personal experience with borderline personality disorder and when I was diagnosed, etc. So I first started going to see a counsellor when I was 9. Now, I'd started seeing her due to my parents' separation and me acting out, which at the time was what was thought to believe because of my parents separating. That later on came to surface that there was actually more to that, and my acting out wasn't just due to my mum and dad's separation, it was due to things that were happening with my great uncle at the time. I then started seeing the school counsellor in grade 8 for anxiety. I was struggling really bad with being in groups of people. I was struggling with being around people in general, going into shopping centres, that type of stuff. I would start shaking uncontrollably. I'd get really irritable and I'd start lashing out at the people around me, and I'd get really upset and I wouldn't be able to control it, and I just want to go and sit in the car and isolate myself from everyone. At 16, I was then diagnosed with anxiety and depression. That was at the time when I had then been sent back to the doctor because I was starting to lose a extreme amount of weight. I wouldn't leave my bedroom. I wouldn't speak to anyone. I was crying all the time. I wouldn't leave my bed. I was lashing out. I was smashing everything around me. My room was filled with holes. I was abusing all of my family. That was when I was then diagnosed with anxiety and depression. At 17, I then started seeing another psychologist, and I then later on had found out she had told my mum that she suspected I had borderline personality disorder, but I wasn't going to be able to be diagnosed then because I was too young to be diagnosed. I had to wait until I was older, but my mum forgot to tell me, so I didn't end up finding out that I had BPD until I was 21, which I will later get into. So then flash forward to 2021 when I found out that my ex-partner had cheated on me. I went into an absolute frenzy. It was a really, really horrible time in my life. There was a lot of other things going on at the time as well, but everything was an absolute blur. It still kind of is a blur. It was a very, very rough time in my life, and a lot of things happened that made me who I am today, but I will always be grateful for the way things turned out, because I'm grateful for where I am in my life. I'm grateful for the things that I have. I may not have the things that I thought I would have by now, but I'm grateful for the things that I do have. So when I found out that my ex had cheated on me, I found out 2 years later. My ex and I were together for 5 years, almost 6. We'd been seeing each other for about 6 years. So when I found out that he cheated on me, obviously that was a really, really hard time, and I was struggling really bad, and my doctor had then put me on another mental health plan to go see another psychologist. I'd been to a few appointments with this psychologist when he then diagnosed me with borderline personality disorder and complex PTSD. There was obviously a lot of other background information towards what was spoken with him about towards my diagnosis, but that was what led me to go seek more help. Mid-2021, I then had a realisation that I had a gap in my memory of my childhood. I was a very, very intelligent child, really, really smart, really, really book smart, black, straight A student, like very hard to believe. And then that was up until maybe about grade 4. I could remember things from the ages of 3, 4 and 5 and 9 onwards, but I couldn't remember anything from the ages of 6, 7 and 8. During the period of time that I don't remember, my great uncle was living with us, which was my pop's brother. He was living with us at the time. We didn't speak to him for years due to a comment that he'd made to me when I was 9 in front of my family about loving me whether I had boobs or not. And then in 2021, I bumped into him at my friend's birthday. He was in the pub area and I saw him and I decided to speak to him for the first time in about 12 years. He looked up at me and he said, "How do you expect me to focus on my pool game with you standing there dressed like that?" And it was at that moment that my stomach dropped and I realised that this man was a disgusting pedophile. Due to a lot of this build up of all the things that was happening, my mum and partner had then found out that I was suicidal. My mum took me down to the emergency department and they tried to admit me in, but I refused to stay and I left. The Monday I then went to my job, and because they knew that I suffered really badly with my mental health anyway, they checked in to see how I was. They then found about what had happened on the weekend and about how I was feeling, and I then got sent straight back down to the emergency department. I had multiple suicide attempts and was not dealing very well at all. At the end of 2021, I then had a relationship breakdown. My partner and I were in the process of splitting up, on and off, leaving each other, and there was a whole heap of other things that happened. And then, so that was at the end of 2021. The beginning of 2022, I then needed to go and live with my dad. That was due to issues that I was then facing with my family, also in regards to my relationship breakdown. And the only place that I had to go was my dad's. I was in the biggest low that I possibly had, and I'd had to go live with my dad, who was quite a distance, like in the same state, but quite a distance from the rest of my family. And at the time that I was staying with him, he treated me better than he'd ever treated me. He was more of a dad to me than he's probably ever been, and it was really, really lovely. The first time I had gone and attempted to, I need to add a trigger warning here, I'm really sorry, but I need to add a trigger warning for suicide, everything like that. I had gone and tried to hang myself in the paddock. And my niece, two of my nieces and my sister had to come and find me. And while they were screaming for me not to do it, and thinking back to that, it's horrible to think that I put them through that. I had then tried to stab myself in front of my mum. So I then eventually was taken to the psych ward at the Royal Hobart Hospital, where I was there for a couple of days. I had my medications changed. I spoke to new psychologists, new psychiatrists who had helped me a great deal. I will be forever grateful for the help that they provided me. My uncle, who I spoke about earlier, had then died. Once he passed away, I then started to have recollection and remember not the entire time, but I started to get glimmers and remember small details of him. Once again, trigger warning. Of him raping me as a child. I also, as a person, I feel like I constantly have to help people, which in a way is a good thing because that's what I want to do, but also sometimes it's incredibly difficult because it can cause you to be taken advantage of. So throughout majority of 2022, I had a large period of my time taken up by somebody who did terrible things to me, terrible things to my family, horrible lies, manipulation. That's a whole another thing that I will make a video about if you guys are interested. I then left my job that I'd been at for the past 3.5 years, which I loved my job. I loved the people that I worked with, but I couldn't do it anymore. I left my job. I went into a really large depression. I hardly left my house. I didn't really speak to anybody. I didn't do anything. I didn't eat. I was in a really, really, really bad state. I then pulled myself together and got a new job. I then had an incredibly large falling out with my father. He is a horrific human being, and I will never be able to forgive him for the things that he's done to me and the things that he said to me. I'll make a separate video on him if you guys are interested in hearing any of that. Towards the end of 2022, I then started to speak to my family and come forward to them about my memories and remembering what had happened with my great uncle and the things that I'd remembered him doing to me. I then started to reach out and start to seek support and help in regards to the memories that I'd been having and what to do about them, not only in regards to how to deal with them mentally, but also in a legal regard. Last month, when I lost my job, that was to me, at the time, it felt like an absolute downfall. It felt like my world had come crashing down, as you feel with BPD. My doctor is now also looking at a diagnosis for an eating disorder and looking at treatment in regards to that, which is also another whole separate video. I'm currently now seeking support and treatment for my BPD, the possibility of an eating disorder, and also how to deal with the sexual assault. Yesterday I took one of the first big steps, and although he is now deceased and no proper justice can be served or anything like that, I felt like it was something that I needed to go and report, I guess, so that if there was anybody else that he did it to, even though he's not here to suffer the consequences that he should, at least I would also have more answers to know that, I guess, to know that I wasn't alone and to know that I wasn't crazy. I mean, I was a little girl. Nobody deserves that. I know that we've only briefly touched over this today, but I will make a separate video going through and talking about different disorders like anxiety, depression, etc. And, you know, how to deal with people around you who have them, and talking a little bit about, you know, obviously treatment causes, symptoms, whatnot. But before I end this video, I do just want to throw out there, if you are struggling, if you need anybody to speak to and you don't feel comfortable messaging, you know, me or a family member or a friend or someone like that, please, 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 please use online resources, use hotlines. You've got Beyond Blue, you've got Lifeline, you've got the Black Dog Institute, there's the Blue Knot Foundation, Embrace Multicultural Mental Health, which is for multicultural people to be able to access resources and services to deal with their mental health if you're unable to afford other ones. And also Mensline Australia. I will leave all of them linked below along with their numbers, but please, if you need help, reach out to someone. If this video has triggered you in any way in regards to any of the topics that we've spoken about, please reach out to one of these lines and just speak to somebody, or even just reach out to a friend and let them know that you're feeling triggered. Whenever you're starting to feel overwhelmed, reach out. If you notice that someone around you or someone close to you is starting to act different, or you notice them acting or dissociating or really pulling back and not acting the way that they usually do, just really aren't themselves, check in with them. It's not weak to speak up. It's not weak, and it's not attention seeking to talk about how you feel. You feel fucking upset, tell your friend, talk to someone about it. Just because you feel like your problems are minor doesn't mean that they are. And sometimes you just need to talk to someone. If you have a friend and you feel like they're struggling a little bit, they just need to vent to someone, be there, let them vent. You don't even need to have to give advice or anything. Just be there, listen, let them know that you're there. If, you know, you're having a crap time or one of your friends is, tell them to come round. You don't need to go out and do something. You don't even need to sit there and talk to each other. Sitting there, laying on the bed, both of you on your phones. Just having someone's company can be all you need. Reach out whenever you need someone. Be there for each other. And it's okay to not be okay. Okay. That is all for today. But if you've made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. Don't forget to like, hit the subscribe button, and also comment if you feel. Thank you for sticking around. Bye!